Good evening, I'm James Izimohan. You're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Serbian police clashed with anti-government protesters demanding snap elections. Thousands in Tel Aviv demand Prime Minister seal Gaza hostage release deal. Political and business leaders convene for UN Finance Summit in Seville. Thousands of people have taken to the streets of Belgrade, demanding early elections and an end to more than a decade of the current government's rule. Tensions boiled over as clashes erupted between protesters and police late Saturday.
Thousands of protesters rallied in Belgrade on Saturday demanding snap elections. Demonstrators, including students, teachers, workers and farmers, flooded the streets, chanting against corruption and calling for political change. The protests coincided with St. Vitus Day, a national holiday commemorating the historic Battle of Kosovo. Protests have rocked Serbia for months, triggered in part by the deadly collapse of a railway station roof in Novi Sad last November that killed 16 people. Many blame corruption and mismanagement for the disaster. On Saturday night, clashes erupted after the protest ended. Some demonstrators threw flares and objects at riot police, while officers used pepper spray to push the crowds back. Dozens protesters arrested. Meanwhile, government supporters gathered in a counter-protest nearby, shielded by heavy police presence around government buildings and Pioneersky Park. The country's leadership has resisted calls for snap elections. Critics accuse those in power of ties to organised crime, stifling the media and using violence to silence opponents, allegations the government denies.
Israelis took to the streets of Tel Aviv on Saturday, demanding an immediate end to the war in Gaza and the return of hostages still held by Hamas militants.
Israelis protested in Tel Aviv on Saturday, calling for the immediate release of hostages still held in Gaza. Thousands of protesters waved Israeli flags, chanted and carried posters with photos of some of the 136 hostages still held in Gaza since the 7th of October 2023. Families of hostages and anti-government protesters voiced over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's handling of the conflict and the stalled negotiations to bring hostages home.
Now we have the opportunity to finish the war in Gaza and to bring Nimrod, my son, and the whole of the hostages that are still in hell of Gaza. After we finish the war with Iran, we deal with Hezbollah, there is no threats and nothing is happening in Gaza. It's only a risk of the hostages and our soldiers. So it's the time the majority of the population demand to finish the war and bring all the hostages back home. And I believe now it's safe for our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, to do the right thing, to save lives, to bring them all back home.
Well, we are used to phrases and being optimistic, but nothing happened. But right now it feels a little bit different. It feels that President Trump really wants to make it happen. And if there's someone that can pursue the Israeli Prime Minister to end this war, it's Trump, and I believe it will happen.
Amid renewed diplomatic efforts, US President Donald Trump has said he believes a ceasefire deal in Gaza could be possible within a week.
I think that the huge success of the Israeli army and all the military forces in the operation in Iran, with the help and the support of the US government, I think it gives us more strength to move forward and understand that Iran is out of the game, and Iran actually is one of the main, who gives all the money to Hamas. And this is the moment to move one step forward and end this big war that we've been in for 631 days.
The only possible way now to create a better future is to end the war and to sign a deal that will bring all of the hostages back, that will bring our soldiers back home. We need to end this war, and I think we can create a better future with normalization agreements, with Saudi Arabia, with Syria. We have a great opportunity after what we did in Iran to create a safer future for everyone here in Israel.
The war in Gaza was triggered when Hamas-led militants attacked Israel on October 7, 2023, killing 1,200 people and taking 251 hostages, according to Israeli tallies. In response, Israel launched a military offensive that, according to Gaza's health ministry, killed over 56,000 Palestinians, most of them civilians. The conflict has caused a severe humanitarian crisis, displacing Gaza's entire population and sparking allegations of war crimes, accusations Israel strongly denies. Meanwhile, Hamas says it is willing to release the remaining hostages as part of a deal to end the war, but insists it will not lay down arms, something Israel demands as a condition for any ceasefire. Recent efforts to resolve the Gaza conflict have gained urgency after the US and Israel bombed Iran's nuclear facilities, leading to a ceasefire in the 12-day Israel-Iran conflict earlier this week.
The U.S. Senate has moved one step closer to passing President Trump's major tax and spending bill following a late-night vote on Saturday. The Republican-controlled Senate voted 51 to 49 to open debate on President Trump's 940-page bill, which includes funding for immigration, border security, tax cuts, and military spending. While most Republicans supported the measure, two broke ranks to join Democrats in opposing it. Trump called the victory a great victory in a post on Truth Social. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced on Saturday in Minsk that Russia and Ukraine have agreed to hold a third round of negotiations following the exchange of prisoners of war and the return of fallen soldiers' bodies. The exact time and location of the meeting have not yet been determined, but both sides are ready to continue the talks in Istanbul. Defense Minister of Ukraine, Rustem Umerov, stated that Kiev is working to promote a meeting at the leadership level and expects to begin substantive dialogue once humanitarian issues are resolved. Military intelligence spokesperson Andrei Yusov noted that despite challenges, the prisoner exchange process under the Istanbul Agreement is progressing steadily. During the 2nd of June meeting, the parties agreed to exchange at least 1,000 prisoners of war and for Russia to hand over the bodies of 6,000 Ukrainian soldiers. Spain has stepped up security in Seville ahead of the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development opening on Monday. Despite a heat wave gripping the city, police have increased their presence around key venues in Seville, where opening events will be held. The agenda includes climate financing, global debt reform, and ways to tackle persistent inequalities. Spain's government is calling the summit a pivotal moment for international cooperation on sustainable development and economic justice. Lithuania has officially withdrawn from the Ottawa Convention, citing growing security risks from Russia. This decision follows a similar move by Poland this week and signals a shift in defense strategies among NATO and EU members. As tensions rise in Eastern Europe, the future of the treaty, which bans anti-personnel landmines, is now in question.
Lithuania has formally withdrawn from the Ottawa Convention, citing rising security risks from Russia. The decision was made official on Friday, with Lithuania notifying the United Nations that it will no longer be bound by the international treaty banning anti-personnel landmines. The withdrawal will take effect in 6 months. Lithuania's move follows similar steps by neighbouring Poland, which also announced its departure from the treaty this week. Both countries, alongside Latvia, Estonia and Finland, all NATO and EU members have raised concerns about the growing military threats posed by Russia, particularly as tensions escalate in Eastern Europe. The Ottawa Convention, formerly known as the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention, was adopted in 1997 and came into force in 1999. It prohibits the use, production and stockpiling of anti-personnel landmines and aims to eliminate these weapons globally. More than 160 countries have signed the treaty, committing to destroy existing landmine stockpiles. However, major military powers like Russia, the United States, China, India, and Pakistan have not joined the agreement, leaving a gap in global compliance. The recent withdrawals by Lithuania and Poland signal a critical shift in the future of the Ottawa Convention. As these countries adapt their defense strategies in response to increasing security threats, the effectiveness of the treaty in addressing modern military challenges is now in question. With several NATO and EU members reconsidering their commitment, the Convention faces growing pressure to evolve in line with current geopolitical realities.
A dangerous heat wave is gripping much of Europe, bringing record-breaking temperatures, triggering wildfires and putting emergency services on high alert. From Türkiye to the Iberian Peninsula, countries are battling both intense heat and the growing risk of public safety.
Europe is sweltering under a powerful heat wave, with temperatures soaring above 40 degrees Celsius in many regions and wildfires erupting across the continent. An extreme heat sparked fires in Turkish cities Izmir, Bursa, Tekirdağ, Sakarya and Adana. Firefighting crews were deployed, but efforts were marred by tragedy when a firefighting plane crashed in Adana during a water collection mission. Rescue operations are underway. Greece is facing its first major heat wave of the year, with inland temperatures expected to peak at 41 degrees Celsius. Many residents in Athens fled to the coast to cool down.
We are all from Pennsylvania, and we've never really experienced a heat wave like this before, so we're all very hot, and all of our skin is very sensitive to the sun. Like me, I had sun poisoning on my hands from the cruise ship in the Mediterranean Sea in the heat.
In Spain and Portugal, authorities issued heat alerts ahead of expected highs up to 44 degrees Celsius. Portugal placed most of the country on yellow alert, with orange warnings in inland areas. Lisbon could reach 42 degrees Celsius by Sunday. Residents in southern France sought relief from the scorching sun on Saturday as a heat wave settled over the region, expected to persist for several days. In Perpignan, temperatures surged to 40 degrees Celsius, leaving parks deserted, while nearby Roussillon recorded 36 degrees by mid-morning. The heat is forecast to intensify further across the country, with some areas expected to see temperatures soar to 40 degrees Celsius. Emergency services across the region are on high alert, preparing for potential surges in heat-related illnesses. Vulnerable groups, including children, the elderly, and those with chronic conditions, are being urged to take extra precautions.
With preparations for COP30 underway, Brazil has inaugurated a new park in the city of Belém, one of the key venues for the climate summit. Locals are already enjoying the new space, which features sports courts, a skate park and playgrounds. Mayor Igor Normando said the city will be transformed before and after the summit, calling it a milestone driven by state and federal efforts. Young residents say COP30 is about more than climate. It's about real change for the planet's future. A top United Nations official has issued a warning that 1 in 4 people globally now live in conflict zones. Speaking in Beijing, George Moreira da Silva, the UN's Under-Secretary General and head of COP UNOPS, called for a renewed global commitment to peace amid deepening humanitarian crises in the Middle East and beyond.
In a world plagued by crises and escalating conflicts, 1 in every 4 people now lives in a conflict zone. That stark warning came from a top United Nations official speaking exclusively in Beijing. The UN's Jorge Moreira da Silva echoed calls for de-escalation in the Middle East, warning that rising tensions threaten both regional stability and humanitarian efforts. And the human toll continues to grow. More than 105 million people are forcibly displaced worldwide, with 35 million now classified as refugees.
It's very impressive to see the numbers. In the 21st century, in 2025, today we have more than 105 million people that are forcibly displaced, 35 million refugees. And the numbers are not improving. They are just getting worse and worse, because the crises are being compounded.
As conflicts compound and diplomacy falters, De Silva says it's time to revisit the very foundation of the UN.
Today we have 1/4 of the population in the world that live under conflict, that they don't have the most essential thing that we can afford or wish in life, which is peace. And it's the time to raise the bar and recommitting on peace, which is the fundamental element of the United Nations Charter.
With tensions simmering and displacement rising, the call is clear. The world must act now to prioritise peace before more lives are uprooted.
Türkiye plans to enhance the efficiency of the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway through expanded cooperation, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan announced. Expansion work is currently underway on the Georgian section of the line. Fidan said that the BTK railway is a vital part of the Middle Corridor, a route that offers new opportunities for economic development and trade diversification. Georgia has also pledged to take all necessary steps to improve transit along the Middle Corridor. According to the Georgian Prime Minister, 98.5% of the BTK project's planned work has already been completed. The BTK line is expected to increase freight capacity from 1 million to 5 million tons per year, with the potential to grow to 15 million tons annually. Azerbaijan's direct investments in Georgia's reached $30.4 million in the first quarter of this year, a five-fold increase compared to the same period last year. That's according to the Central Bank of Azerbaijan. The share of Azerbaijani investments in Georgia within the total volume of Azerbaijan's outward direct investments rose significantly from 1.8 to 9.7%. Meanwhile, Georgian investments in Azerbaijan amounted to $10.2 million during the same period, a 10.7% increase year-on-year. The data reflects growing financial cooperation and integration between the two neighboring countries. Azerbaijan continues to diversify its economic partnerships, moving beyond energy exports into broader regional investment initiatives. During a working visit to Italy, Azerbaijan's Minister of Agriculture, Majnun Mamadov, met with FAO Director General Hu Dongyu at the organization's headquarters in Rome to discuss ongoing and future cooperation. Mamadov highlighted the significance of hosting COP29 in Azerbaijan, addressing measures to minimize the impact of climate change on agriculture. He underscored that agricultural development is a priority in Azerbaijan. Dongyu hailed the high-level relations between Azerbaijan and FAO, noting that Azerbaijan is a key partner. The parties exchanged ideas on projects implemented under the FAO-Azerbaijan Partnership Program and their outcomes. Azerbaijan is demanding accountability after two of its citizens were killed and several others injured in what it calls a violent and unjustified raid by Russian security forces in Yekaterinburg. The operation targeted Azerbaijani households and has sparked outrage in Baku over the treatment of its nationals.
Azerbaijan has strongly condemned what it calls a brutal and unjustified operation by Russian security forces in the city of Yekaterinburg. During the raid on Friday, 2 Azerbaijani nationals were killed, several others injured, and at least 9 were detained. The deadly operation, led by the Russian Federal Security Service, targeted over 10 homes belonging to Azerbaijani families, raising serious concerns about ethnic profiling and the use of excessive force. The victims, Ziadin and Hussein Safarov, were from a well-known Azerbaijani family, originally from Agdam. Their brother, Shakir, confirmed their deaths and is arranging to repatriate their bodies. Several other family members and compatriots remain in custody, with reports suggesting over 60 Azerbaijanis may have been detained. One of those detained and later released described being beaten and humiliated by security forces who allegedly entered without warrants and confiscated valuables, including money and gold. He also claimed that both he and his father were assaulted during the raid. Azerbaijan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs summoned Russia's chargé d'affaires in Baku and issued a strong protest, demanding an immediate and transparent investigation. Officials accused Russian law enforcement of acting with disregard for legal standards and called the killings unacceptable. While the Russian Foreign Ministry claims the raids were part of an ongoing investigation into serious past crimes, allegedly involving Russian citizens of Azerbaijani origin, it has offered little clarity on the deaths or the violence used during the operation. Azerbaijan has called on Moscow to hold those responsible accountable and to guarantee the safety and legal rights of Azerbaijani citizens living in Russia.
One of the Azerbaijanis detained in Yekaterinburg on Friday and later released, Vuga Safarov, has shared harrowing details of alleged abuse at the hands of Russia's Federal Security Service. He describes violent beatings and says his father was brutally tortured despite having serious health issues. Here's what Safarov's speaking to Azerbaijan Report News Agency about the details of the incident.
At first I didn't open the door, but when I saw they were breaking it down, I opened it myself. Everyone was wearing masks. They were from Russia's Federal Security Service. There were also 2 children at home. They beat us without asking anything. They slammed our heads on the floor. They hit us with chairs. They laid us down in dirty cars and said, "Eat this mud." In detention, they tortured us with electric shocks. They insulted us, hit our heads and said, "Do you like it?" They shouted, "Why did you come here?" I could hear my father screaming in the next room. He told them he had a stent in his heart, but they tortured that area with electric current. He screamed, "I'm dying," and only then they called an ambulance. He told me, "Son, they want to blame everything on me. All my ribs are broken." I saw his face. There wasn't a single spot left uninjured. They said I had to sign a contract and go to war. I told them I had donated 30,000 rubles for humanitarian aid. They said, "Why so little?" and beat me again. My father asked, "If I agree, will you release my son?" They said yes. That evening, Shahin Shiklinsky and his lawyer son came and got me and my brother out.
To unpack the diplomatic, legal and social dimensions of this incident, we spoke to Dmitry Britse, expert of Russian International Affairs Council, political analyst from Moscow. Let's see his thoughts.
I think it's the same situation that happened with some citizens and immigrants from Central Asia countries in Russian Federation. As we remember, there were also protests from several Central Asian countries regarding the treatment of their citizens. But according to Russian law enforcement sources, this large-scale raid was conducted within the framework of national security and counter-extremism efforts. But of course, official statements remain limited, but security agencies indicate that the operation targeted specific individuals suspected of involvement in illegal activities. And of course, it's important to understand that the broader context, Russia as a multi-ethnic state, has long sought to maintain stability and control over migration flows, especially after the Crocus City whole attack, terrorist attack in 2024. The migration laws changed in Russia, and there were kind of, let's say, anti-migration policies started in Russia, especially against Central Asian citizens from Central Asian countries. But of course, it's also have an impact on other citizens from other countries, even from Azerbaijan. So we can say it's this incidence of the nature of inevitably carry diplomatic sensitivity, and it demonstrates by Azerbaijani reaction to condemning the raid. From international law perspective, Baku may pursue diplomatic channels to clarify details, ensure consular protection for its citizens, and raise the issue with bilateral forms, yet based on the established patterns of Russian-Azerbaijani relations. Both sides generally aim to avoid public escalation, given their strategic cooperation in energy, regional transit corridors, and South Caucasian security. But of course, it will have an impact on the stability of this relationship between Russia and Azerbaijan, especially on the diplomatic level of this relationship between two countries.
The Azerbaijani Ministry of Foreign Affairs has extended its deepest condolences to the government and people of Pakistan, as well as to the families of the victims following a recent tragic incident in which 13 security personnel were killed in a suicide bombing in northwestern Pakistan on Saturday. The ministry expressed deep sorrow over the loss of life, reaffirmed its solidarity with Pakistani authorities, and wished for a swift recovery for the injured. Azerbaijan also emphasized that it stands firmly with Pakistan during this difficult time and shares in the grief over the heavy human toll of the incident. EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas, visits Armenia. On Sunday, she met with Armenian President Vahan Khachaturyan. On Monday, the High Representative is set to meet with civil society organizations before holding talks with Armenian Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan. Kallas will also meet with Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and engage with youth representatives, including young European ambassadors, members of the Youth Advisory Council, and alumni of the Erasmus Plus program. Tehran has reopened part of central and western Iran's airspace for international and transit flights following a closure during the conflict with Israel. According to a representative of Iran's Ministry of Roads and Urban Development, Majid Akvan, this decision follows a resolution by the Civil Aviation Organization's Coordination Committee and reflects current security considerations. The reopened airspace covers central Iran and parts of the west, in addition to the eastern region already used for domestic, international, and transit flights. Well, that's all we have for now from Baku. Stay tuned to A News for more updates and have a wonderful day.